Hey, good evening, everybody. It's Friday Night Live here at MBR. I'm going to adjust my camera just a little bit. There we go. And I just wanted to hop on first brief a little period of time, and I'll talk a little bit as people jump on. And of course, most people watch these after I live stream. I want to remind people that typically I try to do every Friday at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, my time, on Friday nights, and just have a little informal chat with the audience, and also just update people on things that goings on here at MBR, and all the interesting conversations we're having, and all the great people that we are talking to, and also if you're in the chat, I know I don't expect a whole lot of people to hop on tonight's live stream just because people are traveling. I will tell you that typically when it comes to oh, FLDS Music Archive says hello. Hey, that's right. We chatted. I think we were in communication with each other. Welcome, FLDS Music Archive. That's a very interesting channel, to say the least. And I think I've invited you to come on my program to talk about it. So if you ever want to do that, just let me know. Reach out. It's mormonbookreviews@gmail.com is my email address. So I just wanted to update everybody on stuff that's going on. First of all, how was your Thanksgiving? I hope you had a great Thanksgiving. My mom ended up, of course, she's in the rehab center, so they did make her Thanksgiving dinner there, and then I brought her some leftover apple pie that I received at a Thanksgiving party that I was at yesterday. My friend Michelle, she had me over because my mom, the Thanksgiving party mom and I normally go to, mom wasn't able to make it, and I was like, well, maybe do something different this year. And so I ended up going to my friend Michelle's place and had a really lovely time. So in the comments or in the chat, tell me how your Thanksgiving went. And for those of you who do not live in the United States or Canada, Canada has their Thanksgiving in October. Ours is in November. And it's just a day of giving thanks, typically within the Christian context, giving thanks to God for this wonderful nation we live in, and show gratefulness and thankfulness to each other and the people in our lives. So it's become an important holiday and in America, and it gives us the opportunity to reflect. Especially, it's the biggest holiday it's the first holiday right after elections, and typically that can lead to some maybe self-reflection and hopefully some productive conversations at the Thanksgiving dinner table. I saw yesterday Jacob Hansen had posted a picture with him and his atheist brother Forrest together at Thanksgiving, and they did not kill each other. So we know it's possible. Now think about Jacob Hansen. I think all but he is the only sibling that hasn't left the church. I think he's got 7 other siblings, and they all left the church. So it's just basically Jacob and his parents that are still active in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so I know there's a lot of people that, of course, have, whether it's you're left the church or you're mixed marriage, mixed faith marriage, you've got family members that have left a church, or you've left a church and you see each other after Thanksgiving, or you voted for Trump or you voted for Harris or whatever, and this is the first time maybe you've seen. What were those conversations like? So leave those in the comments after the video airs, or also just put it in the chat. So if you want to get a shout out tonight, or if you have any questions or comments, this is now the time to hop on the chat, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions or give any comments on stuff. And there's a few things I did want to talk about. First of all, I did want to answer a question. And I just got my notification that this video went live 3 minutes in. That always happens. So I want to make sure that people have enough time to hop on and get in on this conversation. Somebody did ask a question, so I wanted to do that one real quick yesterday. So Mike Lawler asks, what foods, desserts did your mom family eat Thanksgiving, Christmas Eve? What was your favorites? Well, so typically we eat turkey. That's always been something that we really like. Sometimes people have ham, although we didn't have ham this year at the party I was at. Just the typical fixings. Our family, basically, we always had mashed potatoes and gravy. We always had stuffing. We always had sweet potatoes, sometimes, and stuff like that. So, that's just a typical American Thanksgiving. We often eat a similar meal around Christmas time. FLDS Music Archive stated needed to re-upload everything because some of the songs were copyrighted. Oh, now it's only 3 separate videos: 2 hours of Warren Jeff singing, and 2 hours of Sister Wives, And the last vid is a documentary songs. Okay, well, that's interesting. Thanks for sharing that FLDS Music Archive. So check out the YouTube channel, FLDS Music Archive. I think it's really important that we document everything we possibly can about all the different movements in the Restoration, including some that we might have issues with and might find repugnant. Most people, I don't know a single fundamentalist that hasn't repudiated the FLDS Church. So I just want to also make it very clear that if somebody is a Mormon fundamentalist, that does not necessarily mean they're a member of the fundamentalist FLDS. Okay, I think it's really important we make that distinction. There's some really good, honorable people that I've had the opportunity to meet with, but also hear the stories of Ogden Kraut, and had Ogden Kraut's son on, and his first plural wife. And I also talked with Benjamin Schaefer. Also, we've talked about Rulon Allred, his granddaughter, on there. And so I really think it's important that the FLDS people get their story out there and not be told by outsiders, and also people don't realize that the FLDS is a small percentage of people who practice the principle in the 21st century. Okay, FLDS Music Archive says made chapters so it's easy to navigate the songs. Oh, okay, great. So check out that channel. Looks like you're the only one in the chat tonight, FLDS Music Archive, which is fine. We got a handful of people watching us. Like I said, I wasn't expecting a whole lot of people to come on tonight. This period of time, from basically the week of Thanksgiving through New Year's, is typically a very slow period of time for my channel. The 2 months that I do worst in is July and December. And what do those both have in common? Well, those are the 2 months that people are doing their most traveling. That tail end of November, all of December, and then of course July. That's peak vacation season in July. So I always find a dip in July and a dip in December. So I've got some good interviews lined up, and I almost hate to release these good interviews in December because people aren't going to get around to watching them. But I have been talking to Scott Walter of the History Channel's America on Earth, and I'm working on doing another simulcast, if you will, with Dr. Nehemiah Gordon of Nehemiah's Wall YouTube channel. And we're going to talk to Scott Walter, and he's going to talk about the American artifacts that he found were hoaxes that purported to be of ancient origin. Now, keep in mind, he has authenticated through his work the Kensington runestone, and also makes a pretty strong argument for using his expertise that the Back Creek stone is also an authentic ancient artifact, but he also has debunked a lot of ancient artifacts that purport to be stories of American civilizations or artifacts of lost civilization in America that are often used by people in the Heartlander movement. So that should be definitely an interesting episode. Oh my goodness. Leroy, I'm surprised okay, Leroy Thomas, I'm here from England, just gone 1 in the morning. It's 1 in the morning there. Love to you and your mom. Thank you, Leroy. It's always good to hear you. Okay, Colby Reddish. Hey, Steve, I'm here. Happy Thanksgiving. Great, thank you. IDK4003. Hello, Steve. Okay, we're getting some of the regulars hopping on. It's nice to see some of the regulars hop on. I'm genuinely surprised there's anybody hopping on, to be honest with you, because it's such a busy time. And like I said, this is the time of year when I see a dip in views on the channel, and it's just inevitable. And it's just one of those things I just learned to deal with. I've tried Christmas specials. I've tried so many things. Of course, the problem is with Christmas specials, their expiration date is very short. So once Christmas passes by, there's nobody watching it. So I try to experiment and do a lot of other things. I did want to comment on a few things. I just happened to talk. I was actually talking with David Boyce today on the phone, but we're mostly talking about the Chicago Bears firing their coach, Matt Eberflus. A lot of people don't realize it. David is a big NFL fan, and he's a Packers fan, and I'm a Bears fan. So I can show that we can have civil discourse even between Packers and Bears fans. See, it's not just within the Restoration. I'm doing it in the real world, including the biggest rival in NFL history between Green Bay and Chicago. And I was listening to a lot of sports talk radio today, and boy, people are really happy that the coach was fired, but also are very mad at the ownership, the McCaskey family of the Bears, who are just disastrous owners of the team. Now I'm going to step off. So I talked to him about football for about a half hour, which is great because you need to do that sometimes. Sometimes you need to unplug yourself from a lot of the drama that's in this world and just be able to talk about things like sports and other things outside of just Mormonism all the time. I found that about a little over a year ago, I started going through a lot of trouble, and I kind of had to disconnect myself from watching a lot of Mormon podcasts. So I I don't watch as many as I used to. I do get, I stay on top of things, but just don't watch them. Like, I think it's good for my mental health that I don't, I need to take time outs from this kind of stuff. But the subject of Jacob Hansen came up during the phone call. And again, I'm not doing this to get views. If I wanted to get views, I'd put Jacob Hansen's name in the title and then say, hey, look, I'm talking about Jacob Hansen, and get all a bunch of people jumping on here. That's not what I do. I don't like to talk about stuff that's behind the scenes, especially. But since Jacob brought it up a few days ago, he released a video talking about John DeLynn. I did want to kind of give a little background because he brought me up in the conversation and did screenshots where John DeLynn referred to me. And I'm only going to briefly touch on this because I don't really like to talk about, like, I would never tell this story, but because Jacob had brought it out and made it a public story, I feel like I can say something about it and let people know. So Jacob and I started talking. Jacob was really excited about John's conversation he had with the Paul brothers. He really felt like he saw a side to John that made him kind of do a 180 on him in some ways. And so he wanted to get together with John. And so I helped kind of facilitate the dialogue and the conversation between the two. And they were supposed to get together for lunch last October. And without getting into too many details, I think John just didn't feel comfortable doing it at that time. And so he said, listen, and so that's when he brought up my name, just if you need to get in touch with me, just talk to Pynakker. And so I'm just addressing that because my name was brought into this, and let people know that I do. There's a lot more of that I do that people will never know about. I would have never told anybody about me. I would have never publicly gone and said anything about the conversations I was having with John. And I actually won't give you any details other than what's been publicly said. I consider both John DeLynn and Jacob Hansen to be friends. A lot of people, there are people many people love John DeLynn and hate Jacob Hansen, and vice versa. That's the reality. So there's very few people that can be friends with both, which is what I strive to do. And actually, that's modeling what we're trying to do here at MBR, is get people who don't normally talk to each other to talk to each other. And often I'm often used as a person that helps facilitate these conversations. I'm honored to be. It's an honor and a privilege to be in that place, to be able to have these conversations. And honestly, I tell people, I was talking to David, again, he brought it up to me. I wouldn't have brought it up, but David brought it up to me. He's like, when we were talking, and I told him, I said, well, I feel really bad about it because, one, they're both my friends. I wish both of them could get together and see the side that I get to see from both of them, that maybe the enemies or people who hate them don't see. And I feel like there's good in both Jacob and John. And I wish the two of them could communicate to each other, look at each other in the eyes, and maybe come to some kind of understanding, maybe some way of dialoguing. I'm still hopeful that can happen. But I just told David, I said, I feel like I failed. Like I know I'm not I'm not 100% responsible. I'm just a small percentage of this, right? Because it's really between John and Jacob. But I really feel like every time that I'm not able to get people to talk or have a productive conversation, when that doesn't happen, I feel bad because I feel like I failed as a mediator, as somebody who really wants to get people to talk. So I just felt really bad about it, because again, look, I get flack from people because I'm friends with John. I get flack from people because I'm friends with Greg Mattson. I get flack because of my friendship with Jacob Hansen and then my friendships with RFM and all these people. If I say one nice thing about these people in any form, I get a whole bunch of people attacking me and them. And it's like, no, you don't understand. One day I'm going to say nice things about John DeLynn, and the next day I'm going to say nice things about Jacob Hansen or Greg Mattson or whatever. That's just what I do because I am friends with them. Colby Reddish says, Steve, you really think Jacob wants an honest conversation with John? Colby, to answer your question, I do believe that Jacob is sincere in wanting to have dialogue and conversations with John. Yes. And Jacob told me things that really gave me hope as well. So I do think there's a side to Jacob Hansen that maybe not everybody gets to see. I get to see it. Look, I know he's a complicated guy. I know he drives a lot of you. He does stuff that drives me crazy sometimes. Okay. So, and I sometimes reach out and just say, hey, dude, just let's try to mellow out here a little bit. Maybe not be so harsh on your attacks, or criticisms, because these are my friends too. And like I said, John DeLynn's a friend. So Colby, yeah, I am hopeful that one day Jacob and John can sit down and have a conversation. As a matter of fact, Jacob wanted to do something where we do it on Mormon Stories, where I'd fly out to Utah and do an episode with me kind of mediating between the two. And who knows, maybe one day that will happen. He made attack videos about John's kids. Colby, that's very true. And Jacob actually told me that he's taken, I think he told me he took them down, and he says he feels really bad about things that he said about John in the past and his family. And so he told me from here on out, he's never going to go after his family. So I just just wanted to let you know that's what Jacob told me. That's what gave me hope that, hey, maybe there's a possibility here. Look, I understand Jacob's a very controversial person, and Colby, I really want to thank you for sharing with me your thoughts on this too, because there's a lot of things. But look, everybody, there's a lot of people. Look, I've done thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of stuff on both my channel and other channels, done hundreds and hundreds of interviews. And I'm sure that there are things that I've said and done that upset people too. There are, because people will react to it. I don't like this environment that we're in right now. One of the things that kind of really bothers me about what I see in the Mormon podcast world, it reminds me a lot of MSNBC and Fox News. You got to choose your side. And I don't see anybody talking to each other. And I think that's also indicative of the state of this country. I wish Jacob, to be honest with you, I like Jacob, but I wish he wouldn't be so harsh on his attacks on people. That's just me, because I don't feel comfortable doing that myself. And I just feel like I don't know if it serves any purpose, right? Maybe it does, but I just don't think it does. Okay. So that's where I'm on that. Okay, I gotta adjust this thing. Okay, it's always backwards. Jeez. Okay. So yeah, Colby, thanks for talking to me about that. So it's very cold front came through here in Florida, and that's why I'm wearing the hoodie. I know that when it's cold here in Florida, that means in the Midwest they're getting slammed. David Boyce told me today it's 15 degrees in Wisconsin today. So when it's cold here, I know it might get into the 30s in some areas here and just north of us, which this time of year is quite unusual. You usually don't get these low of temperatures until January, February. Colby says, thanks for your answers. I also want good faith exchanges. You're awesome, Steve. Thanks, Colby, and you're even awesomer. You're an awesomer person. Thank you so much. By the way, don't forget to give thumbs up to this conversation so it gets in front of people. Also, we got a fairly active chat, which I was surprised that how active the chat is. So if you want to have any questions or comments, this is like with Colby. We just had a dialogue. He asked me a question about the situation. I gave him the answer. That's what's going on. So, and that's the other thing too. Like sometimes I wonder, like, is it smart to do these live things? Because sometimes I could just say something off the cuff that like, oh, why did I say that? Or, and then, I know there's people recording all my stuff. So even if I take it down, it's going to get out there anyhow. But, sometimes I put myself out there. And I also realize like there's some times where I can be flippant. I could maybe be more empathetic towards people. I can have sharp elbows at times and harsh. I think people, but typically it really has to do like if you attack my mom, you're going to have the wrath of Steve. You will see that Christopher Hitchens that lives inside of me who will hitch slap you. When you like somebody who attacked my mom recently, a YouTuber, a YouTuber, I don't even know. I'm not paying any attention to anything he's doing, but he attacked my mom. He attacked me. It was just kind of a sick situation. So you attack my mom, yeah. If you try to do harm to me or my channel, I'm going to fight back too. And I felt that this person was trying to do all of that, and hopefully they get some help, because they certainly do need some help. And I've actually had people reach out to me who knew him since he was a child and told me some stuff about his background that kind of gives me some more empathy about him too. But this is not anything new. This person has a track record of doing some terrible things to people that goes back decades. And I think he needs help. So keep him in your prayers. Let's see. FLDS Music Archive says, I'm tired of all the hate. I'm LDS and feel like we get attacked a lot online at the moment. Probably Jacob feels the same. It isn't easy. Okay, yeah. Okay, IDK4003 says, I think it's interesting that Jacob and the Paul brothers didn't see John's perspective as clearly until the Paul brothers interview. I think anyone who saw your interview with him could pretty much get the same gist, that he does actually like the church, but has become progressive and or has been hurt by the church in some way. Andrew SD says, I'm here for Pynakker Uncensored. Okay. Okay, and then Jacob, and then Kobe Reddish says Jacob has dished out about 100 times more attacks than I've ever seen on him. Okay, so this is the dialogue I'd like to have. People have these talks and these conversations. I do have to say that I think this happens within the evangelical world as well. Is often a lot of evangelicals I have a siege mentality. They think the whole world's out to get them and they're trying to destroy them. And I see this also represented in the Latter-day Saint Church. Now, keep in mind that the evangelicals control one of the most powerful political parties in the most powerful country in the world. So it's really hard to say that we're being persecuted when we essentially control the levers of power in this country. That's the reality. So it's I do feel like, and then I think, but I do think that there's a siege mentality that's out there that they feel, and then again, that's also based on this idea that we're losing the culture wars, and so that they feel that they're under attack. I see a similar thing in the LDS world as well, especially from people from the more conservative perspective. The evangelicals and many of the conservative Latter-day Saints are very, very similar and have very similar worldviews. And so I just want to mention that because I think it's important that we know there's a lot of similarities between a group, and I think that that's why sometimes I feel I can speak the same language as many Latter-day Saints do. Pynakker uncensored, according to Andrew SD. Yeah, I can be, and sometimes I can get myself into trouble. Although I think I'm pretty good at being measured, there are times when I do get upset when some people, some Christian apologists attacked my friends at Book of Mormon review, the two young people from that channel. I lit into him pretty good. And if somebody's going to attack my mom, I'm going to let them have it too. So Mom is recovering. 2 weeks ago this Sunday, my mom broke her hip. She's in the process of going under rehab. Is improving every day. The food she's getting there is okay at the rehab facility, but the staff of the service is really good and professional, so she's really happy with it. And we're hopeful that she could come back home as early as this Friday. Okay, so then Andrew SD says Jacob's videos are really professionally done. Yes, he does really professional work, and some of his arguments are interesting. Unfortunately, he has not progressed from being a forum troll otherwise. Yeah, so I think, and again, this is part of this. If you look at a lot of this comes out of 1990s conservative talk radio on AM and the rise of Fox News, which basically kind of created a new type of conservative type of engaging the culture. And basically the thought is, hey, we've been losing these cultural wars. We need to fight back. They feel that they lie about us, and the media does not accurately portray people of faith. I can tell you that the liberal media does not understand Christianity, does not understand Latter-day Saints. So the idea was to create alternative media that pushes back against what they consider this progressive narrative that is not an accurate one. The New York Times view of evangelicalism and Latter-day Saintism is very skewed, very secular, and I don't think you could get a person at the New York Times to even have they don't even understand people of faith. They don't even live in that world. They don't even know people of faith. So there was a need, in one sense, a void in which AM radio filled and Fox News filled. A lot of your free weekly newspapers filled to kind of counter the more liberal newspapers. So you have this alternative media develop, and this is kind of like when I watch Greg Mattson and when I watch Jacob Hansen, it is kind of reminiscent of that way of engaging in the cultural wars. And they believe that it is a war, and when you're at war, you got to fight, and that's, I think, the position that they're taking. So I understand where they're coming from. I've seen this. I was involved in Republican politics for a long time, so I understand the cultural milieu that they're in. And I also recognize that, first of all, it's a pox on both houses here. I think that the water has been poisoned by both sides, whether it's conservative, progressive, whether it's believer or ex-believers. There has been a real poisoning of the well here, and it's made it very difficult for us to have conversations. I tell people, I said, listen, if I chose a lane and went full faithful, like converted, or went full like anti, I know I could have a bigger channel, but that's not me, and that's not where my heart is. And also I'm a person of value. You know, I have morals and values and ethics. I would never do something to get views. I really feel that God put me in this place to help have civil dialogue and get people to talk to each other. So I was kind of disappointed that the meeting between Jacob and John Dehlin fell through, and I did feel like I'd failed on that one. But also there are many great success stories that will never be made public, of these great conversations that we have to get people to talk to each other and helping people. You know, one of the interesting things, there's a lot of young men, a lot of men in their late teens and early 20s that reach out to me and kind of want to get my views on things, and they have a lot of questions about religion and faith and life, and I'm happy to do that. You know, I spent an hour with a young man earlier today just talking about the history of Mormonism, and he's a Latter-day Saint, and he's got a lot of interesting questions, and he's just learning a lot about the history of the church that he didn't know about. So he has a lot of questions, and it's interesting how, you know, a lot of people who have questions about the church, rather than go to their bishop, they'll come to me. And it was so interesting. What was so fascinating to me, there was this summer, there was an evangelical who reached out to the Mormon missionaries, who's doing a class for his church about different religious movements and sects in America. And one of the lectures he was going to give was on Mormonism. And the Mormon missionary said, "Oh, just talk to Steve." So the Mormon missionaries referred me to get together with evangelical. And I told this evangelical, who's a Calvinist, and he and I don't see eye to eye on some certain things. I just told him, I said, "Listen, I want you to be able to I want to give you the resources and the materials to give a presentation in your class that a Latter-day Saint can sit in and say, listen, I may not agree with his conclusions, but I at least believe that he gave us a fair shot and was able to correctly articulate what we really believe." I think so often a lot of the attacks that evangelicals do against Latter-day Saints are not accurate, or they're out of date. I mean, most Christian apologetics are using 1980s arguments, and we've progressed so far away from that. And so I really want evangelical apologists to do better work. That's why I reached out to a ministry last year to try to help them, and they ended up stabbing me in the back and then writing this hit piece on me, which is kind of a joke, and nobody brings it up to me because nobody pays any attention to this group. Okay, let's see. Yes, Jordan Tanner says, "Thanks for the live stream. Lives are a good way to feel connected." That's right. And I want to do more of that. And actually, I'll be transitioning eventually to StreamYard, and that will enable me to do some more stuff too and bring people in on the conversations. Yeah, Jordan, thank you. FLDS Music Archive says, "Nemo the Mormon was involved in some capacity in getting people to film inside temples and was cheered by John Dehlin. I find it weird to cheer on the exposure of sacred rituals for Latter-day Saints." Well, FLDS Music Archive, I don't think it was Nemo the Mormon that was people to film in temples. I could be wrong, but that was New Name Noah that was doing the taping inside there. And New Name Noah is another example of an ex-Mormon who left the reservation, like the person that attacked me. New Name Mormon is persona non grata in the ex-Mormon space at this time because of certain things that he did. So I don't know if Nemo did the filming. I know sometimes they encourage people to film like their disciplinary hearings and stuff like that. But I'm not aware of, but I could be wrong because, like I said, I do sometimes unplug myself from this world. But from my understanding, it was New Name Noah that was doing the undercover videos of the temple ceremonies. And you know what? I just want to let you know, even as an atheist, guess what? I never watched them. I felt like it wasn't my place to watch because I do respect sacred spaces for people. Even as an atheist, I felt that way. I might have watched a few minutes, but I never watched the whole things. I just felt like I'm just not that into it. You know, I really feel like, okay, so Colby Ryder says all Nemo did was interview someone who did. Colby, was that New Name Noah that he interviewed? And I know that a lot of people in the ex-Mormon community won't have anything to do with New Name Noah anymore as well, from my understanding. Well, I was really surprised to do 30 minutes today. I didn't expect a whole lot of people hop on, but we actually have a decent, it wasn't. Okay, so it wasn't. Okay, so there's been other people that it was someone else. Okay, thank you so much, Colby, for clearing the air on that. And honestly, if I had the chance to interview somebody like that, I might consider doing that too. So I don't necessarily, but I wouldn't talk too much about the details either. But it's part of the story of Mormonism too, so you can't completely ignore it. I do have people that I talk to about, you know, some aspects of temple ceremonies. within the historical context, changes that have been made into the ceremonies, those kind of things. So I'm generally aware of what happens in the temple ceremonies, in much the same way that people are very aware of what happens in Masonic temple ceremonies. They're sacred ceremonies, but they're public as well. Matter of fact, they were doing William Morgan's book when that was published. People would do outdoor plays, outdoor airings of the Masonic ceremonies based on William Morgan's book. So that's where we think that Joseph may have been exposed to Freemasonry at a young age during the rise of the anti-Masonic party that was very powerful in Western New York in the 1820s and 30s. Okay, well, I'm going to stick around for another minute here. If anybody has any more questions or comments, now is the time to do it. If you want to make a donation in the live chat and get that would be great. It would be awesome. I love it when people make donations to the channel, and I can give people a nice shout out as well. Make sure you're subscribed to Mormon Book Reviews, because in order to participate in the chat, you need to be a subscriber as well. Okay, so I just want to let you know that like I said, I'm going to be talking to Scott Walter of History Channel's America on Earth, along with Nehemiah Gordon, sometime in December. I'm also going to be doing an interview with Dr. Kyle Bashirs and Stefan Tager, who gave a presentation last month about Protestant ministers and evangelicals in early engagement with the Restoration, I think mostly in Utah. D.L. Moody, who's like one of the original evangelicals, he's the GOAT. He came out to Utah twice and actually spoke I think he spoke in the one time he spoke in the Tabernacle, and the Quorum of the 12 and Brigham Young were all present. And what's so fascinating is that there was, in the early days of once the Utah was established and they're building the Utah Empire, there were Protestant ministers that made some engagements that are, I would say, more positively oriented than what we see with the current state of Protestants engagement with. When I say Protestant, I mean evangelical Protestants, because mainline Protestants, they don't have any issues, because on one hand, because they don't really believe anything anymore, unfortunately, because they have traded in theological rigidity for social justice, progressive politics, which is fine if you want to do that. But unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of theology left in these churches, mostly political activism. Okay, so first of all, IDK 4003 gives us $4.99 in the house. You're doing God's work, buddy. Can't wait for a Book of Mormon read with Book of Nehemiah. Yes, that was something that we were planning on starting, a Book of Mormon read through with Dr. Nehemiah Gordon. It was actually, and I was lining up scholars at BYU who are going to come in, and we were going to read through the Book of Mormon. Unfortunately, I had my medical condition happen, and that changed everything. Okay, Andrew SD says, do you have any thoughts on the changing views of Freemasonry within Mormonism? 1830 church seemed to hate it, but then came Nauvoo. Yes, that's a very, very interesting question. The Freemasonry and Mormonism. Of course, I've read the book. I've read through the book Method Infinite. I haven't finished it because I was planning on doing an interview, but that's a long story with Cheryl and the co-authors, Nick. But there's a lot still to be explored about Mormonism and Freemasonry. And I actually, because it also, if you look at it, Andrew, I don't know if you read the Lost 116 Pages book by Don Bradley, but he hints that there might have been there may have been Nauvoo era temple ceremonies in the original Lost 116 Pages. Now, I would argue that actually, if there were, using a naturalistic explanation, Joseph Smith would have been made aware. He was aware of William Morgan, who was killed allegedly by the Masons for writing a tell-all book, and there was public knowledge about these Masonic ceremonies. And so if there were temple-like ceremonies that were in the Lost 116 pages from a naturalistic explanation, it most likely would have been influenced by the Masonic stuff that was going on at the time. In the Language of Adam, yes, actually, I have that book, In the Language of Adam, IDK 4003. I gotta dig that up because I got so many books and I got to get caught up. But I did get In the Language of Adam as well. So yeah, and also speaking of which, speaking of the Adamic language, I was talking with Matthew Gill, and their leather set of new scriptures are about ready to go. He's going to send me a set. I'm going to talk about them. But this allegedly is the Adamic language. Matthew Gill sent this to me from England, And this is the opening line. So this is the Adamic language, is what he claims it is, and this is the translation. My name is Jeranek, son of Ishma from the Ishna from the house of Ishna. And then it's a note, the nice little note that Matthew wrote me. But so he alleged that this is the Adamic language and this is the translation, and he is going to be sending me a copy of their leather-bound scriptures. And I was the one that kind of gave him the recommendation. Actually, I was the one that gave him the recommendation to use what printer. It was the same printer that Denver Snuffers Group used to do theirs. It's a printer in India, and they can do these beautiful leather-bound scriptures for very, very reasonable prices. And so, from my understanding, that's who Matthew Gill went with for his scriptures. So we'll be talking about the Book of Jeranek and the Chronicles of Aranek and all that kind of good stuff here at Mormon Book Reviews. And so I'm expecting a copy from Matthew to come anytime soon. Of course, he is the prophet, seer, and revelator of his church there in merry old England, and is actually a good friend. And he's going to try to get out here next year to Florida. They always go to Disney World, and we're going to try to get together. So that's another person I'm talking to. And yeah, it's been a really interesting time. I don't know. I have no idea what interview I'm going to be posting for Tuesday. Maybe, actually, I'm going to talk to Jonathan Neville. Maybe I can interview him this weekend and talk about his new book, Moroni's America, which I got a hard copy from Boyd Tuttle in last week, and talk about his new book, Moroni's America 2.0, which is an interesting, it's kind of an update of his original Moroni's America. And I asked him what some of the new stuff they're going to be putting in that book. And he said part of it is his work on there's the language of Adam right here, right there. Right there. There's Adam in the language of Adam right there. Okay, I lost my train of thought there. So yeah, either way. Okay, so it also in the language of Adam. So I got the books right behind me, and it also proposes the Book of Mormon authors are endowed with. I don't know. He hasn't finished his thought there. Yeah. Okay. So again, I'm surprised we got this many people in the chat. So I'm really happy and excited. I'm going to hang out with some friends in a little bit, and then hopefully have a productive weekend. Hopefully have a productive week while my mom will be back. Hopefully by the end of next week, we'll be back home from her rehab. Hopefully she'll be able to start living life normally again. Hopefully she'll be able to walk around well. I also hope that she'll be able to drive again. IDK says, I meant endowed from temple rituals. Okay. So the proposed the Book of Mormon authors were endowed with temple rituals. Okay. This is really interesting stuff because there's another gentleman who is professor at James Madison, and he went on Mormon Stories a couple of years ago to kind of push back against my thesis, A Protestant Defense of the Book of Mormon. And I want to get his name real quick, so I got to find the source. It's in here. I know it is. And this is the book in the language of God, and John Butler sent this to me, or the Paul brothers did. And there's a I always forget his name, and I don't know it when I see it, but he is a professor at James Madison, I think a law professor, and he basically Val Larson, whose work is cited in this book as well, and they're advocating a very interesting hypothesis about the Book of Mormon. I think it's interesting, but I also think it's a little too esoteric. I also have the Keystone to the Keystone, which is kind of building on some of that stuff, adding like apocryphal books that kind of hint towards it and stuff like this. This is kind of an esoteric form of Mormonism in my mind. It's definitely not mainline biblical scholarship. And so when I make critiques or defenses of the Book of Mormon, I'm doing it from a more Protestant lens. And I think that, like I tell people, so the Book of Mormon is one of the most Christian books ever written on American soil. It is a pretty Protestant book. It's a very Pentecostal book. It's doctrinally, I would say, Orthodox. So for people to just the plain reading of the text, it's very there's nothing in there that most Protestants would object to. There's very little Mormon doctrine in the Book of Mormon. So for people to then impose onto the text Mormon doctrine and all these kind of things, it's interesting to me, but it's highly speculative. And this is not the kind of stuff. This is kind of like esoteric readings of the Bible that kind of tell us I don't know that they're kind of unlocking mysteries and gnosis and knowledge, and it's kind of like a Gnostic type of Christianity where you have the secret code that we've broken, or that's in the pages, and so I find it interesting, and I love speculative stuff. I don't poo-poo it, but I also like to go by what, I also like to follow where mainstream scholarship goes too, because I think it's really important to be grounded in really serious scholarship as well, and not get so far into these speculative things I think a lot of people do. And yep, the lots of laughs. That's the Stick of Joseph channel right there. Yep, Andrew. And the Paul brothers, I haven't talked to them for a bit, but as far as I know, they're doing very well. Their channel has really exploded, which I knew would happen when I first met them. Like, oh, these guys are going to be superstars, and they are. And more power to them. Oh, and one last thing is I might be going out to Mesa, Arizona in the month of January. Josh Gailey of the Church of Jesus Christ invited me to come out there. They were doing like a Western States conference in Mesa. And he said, I'd love to have you come out to that. And he even said, maybe you could set up like a meetup. So I thought about doing a meetup. And as soon as I got off the phone with Josh, I called up Robert Messick of Book of Mormon Editions and said, hey, why don't you, because Robert of Book of Mormon Editions, he lives in Mesa, Arizona. And I was like, why don't we do like a dual meetup where people can meet both of us? I said, I'm sure we have a fair amount of people that watch us. And there's a lot of Latter-day Saints that live in there, and Bickertonites that live in Mesa as well. So hopefully and this will be the first time I will have flown since December of last year. I had a lot of flights planned this year, but I couldn't because of my health condition. But I really feel like the time's come for me to start living life again and start traveling again. So hopefully I'll be able to get out to Mesa, Arizona in January. And I just want to thank Josh Gailey and everybody at the Church of Jesus Christ, aka the Bickertonites, for being such wonderful people. I stayed at a Bickertonite home during the hurricane overnight, and that was a real blessing, and had great conversations with them and prayed and fellowshiped with each other and had a nice time with them. So I always have a real soft spot for the Bickertonites. They're awesome people, wonderful people. All right. Well, I think I'm actually much further into this than I really thought I'd get into. I really thought this would be like a 20-30 minute one because I figured so many people would be out of town and traveling, but I'm pretty happy with the amount of chat. Decent amount, not a huge amount of people actually watching, but it seems to me like that based on the amount of chats I'm getting, I wonder if it's even accurate, the number that I'm seeing on the screen here. But we had a decent amount of people to hop in the stream here tonight as well. So again, most of you are going to be watching this after I stream. I want to encourage you to try to hop on the live stream Fridays at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, and and then 5 p.m. Pacific Time. So I got the main for the continental United States, I got all the right times. Make sure you are subscribed to Mormon Book Reviews. Tell your family and friends to please subscribe. I'd love to get to 9,000. I'm closing in on 9,000 subscribers. I'd love to get there sooner than later. Would have probably been at 10,000 subscribers last July if I didn't have all this stuff happen to me with the health condition, but also with the hurricanes. It effectively lost 2.5 months of programming. Imagine 2.5 months of programming that wasn't done this year because of everything that's happened. It's been crazy. So we're building this thing back up. I'm really encouraged by the encouraging words we've been getting from people. I want to make sure if there's anybody else in the chat here. Yep. Okay. So I was able to address everything. IDK 4003. Thank you for the donation of $4.99. It's greatly appreciated. Love all of you. Appreciate all of you. Hope you have yourself a great weekend. And remember, the most important thing is this: all the voices of the restoration will be heard here on Mormon Book Reviews.